My work is focused on the resolution. Integrative meaning we use many different modalities and perspectives and viewpoints to create a shift in the psyche or the subconscious that takes my body out of that adaptation phase and puts it into repair so I don't keep cycling. And what I have found, because my specialty, my background is as a registered nurse, and my background is as a patient that was diagnosed with multiple autoimmune diagnoses while still a teenager. My specialty is in chronic, complex, persistent autoimmune illnesses, which do not follow the framework that many traditional G&M practitioners use, which says identify the conflict, find the antidote, and you're cured. For many of us, those conflicts started early in childhood, maybe even before we could speak, and then continued throughout childhood. So how do you remember, right? A moment in time that the switch got flipped and then turn it off. It doesn't work that way. So there has to be a way that we can address long-standing chronic issues with many tracks and triggers and intolerances and sensitivities and trauma and PTA. Like how, these were the questions I was asking myself. How could we address those? Because there has to be a way, because I am an optimist. And from the moment that I received my first diagnosis at age 18, and they're like, it's going to be chronic, you need medication for the rest of your life, and sometime in the future, you'll need surgery to completely remove the organ. I went, no, thank you. And set off to try and find a different way. So that's part of my like mission and purpose in life, is I just knew that there had to be a better way. And I feel like we found it because I no longer have ulcerative colitis. I no longer have Addison's disease. I do occasionally, I was sharing just with a group earlier, have a POTS flare up from time to time, which is an overwhelm relationship caregiving conflict. My husband had emergency surgery last week and I had a POTS flare up, but it makes sense. Like, so even if I do get a symptom, it makes sense and I don't freak out. I'm not like, oh my gosh, what did I eat? Why do I have POTS again? How do I fix this? My husband, who's my rock, had to go to the emergency room, was in surgery. It was a whole thing. Came home, is on bed rest, and I'm taking care of him while trying to still work. Like, no wonder my psyche registered that as overwhelm. And no wonder I had some heart palpitations and tachycardia at the end of it all when I could finally breathe, right? So this is the shift that's possible for you too, not only to reverse major diagnoses that conventional medicine says are irreversible, but also if you do happen to have flares from time to time, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. It doesn't mean your body's broken. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you have to go find a different protocol. It just means you need to find the meaning behind it. Make sense of that, and you're good to go. So what I have found with these complex chronic cases is that there is, yes, there is the psychological piece rooted in your subconscious. Yes, there's the biological piece of your organ adapting for survival. Your brain, the neurological piece of your brain changing. But there's a really big energetic and identity piece as well. And I saw this even before I developed what I previously called the autoimmune resolution program, which is now the integrative resolution method. I was working as a nurse and I was working as a coach and I was seeing clients and I was like, all my clients with fibromyalgia have the same sort of personality, if you will, or same sort of approach or outlook on life. And all my clients with ulcerative colitis, and I was seeing these patterns and I started categorizing them and labeling them according to what I called their stressful triggers. Like fibromyalgia is they grew up in an environment where they were really down on themselves and had low self-esteem. And ulcerative colitis patients like me were like social justice warriors and advocates for the underdog, and they were fighters and they were always like resisting the status quo. And so as much credit as I need to give to Dr. Hammer in German New Medicine, because that informs so much of what I do, I think a lot of it is also just patterns that are are something we all can pick up on, and we can categorize and identify and label them however we want, which is why I've taken it upon myself to create what I'm calling these illness identity archetypes, because I found that outside of my certification program where I teach healthcare practitioners and medical professionals the science of German new medicine and the anatomy and physiology and biology, that isn't necessary for self-healing. You don't need to know that in order to use this information to help you heal. What you do need to know, and what I have seen create the best results and shifts in my client, is when you understand that the person or the way you are being, your identity, staying trapped in that is what's also keeping you trapped in your symptoms. And you understand that shifting your identity and how you see yourself in the world is what also shifts the physical symptoms. That is like the key that unlocks everything. So that's where I came up with these illness identity archetypes. And it was a way to organize and make sense of the patterns that I was seeing and communicate them to somebody that maybe doesn't have a nursing background or maybe isn't as interested in the science and is like, look, I'm busy. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm an employee, or I run a business. I want to get better. How do I get better? And I was saying this over and over. And if you're in my programs already, like, you're probably tired of hearing it, but it's not about what I need to do to get better. It's who I need to become to feel better. When I change my thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, emotions, and my actions stemming from those changes, then my body gets the cues that it's safe to release those patterns of adaptation. It goes through resolution and healing. And I become a different person, not only mentally, but physically as well. Like, I have become the version of me that does not have ulcerative colitis.